Everybody, welcome back to the channel. I just spilled coffee all over myself, so maybe you've had one a day like that in your life. But we are back here, continuing our read-through of Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings. And speaking of bad days, we're going to find a couple characters here who seem to have had bad lives. And they're going to be referenced a little bit throughout this chapter. We're up to chapter 15, entitled The Decoy. This is going to be part one. This is a long chapter. And Sanderson made a comment in an interview once, or maybe it was on his YouTube channel, that he likes the chapters in the Stormlight Archives to be longer. He likes people to be able to read them, put it down, walk away and think about it, and kind of chew on the story. It's a deep story. It's a big story. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. And that's just one book, right? And so this chapter is going to be one of those where we're going to kind of take it in parts. But part one is going to bring us back to the Shattered Plains, and it's going to take us back to the King's Court, where they are essentially putting together the camp from where the battle was with the Chasm Fiend. And a lot of people have died, tragically. There were nearly 50 soldiers, 50 men killed all in all during the fight before Dalinar and Adolin, and then of course Elhokar with the final killing blow, defeated the Chasm Fiend. And they had a couple choices to go back another way. In the fight, the bridge that they used to get over to the place where they were going to hunt the Chasm Fiend had been destroyed by the Chasm Fiend. The great beast had thrashed around and, of course, during the course of the battle had destroyed it. So Dalinar made the decision that they would wait while word was sent back to the camp. There were some soldiers on the other side of the chasm, so they returned back to the war camps. And they are going to send a new bridge. And so they have several hours to kill. Well, as they're looking through, gathering reports, they're sort of putting together the details so that the king knows primarily all that's happened. Dalinar is standing by himself, and he's looking out over the plains, and he is thinking. Adolin is going to see him, and he's again going to be in amazement at his father's courage, his father's fighting during the most recent battle with the Chasm Fiend, and just really wishing that Dalinar would be that man. And he believes with everything that's in him that that's the man that the kingdom needs. Well, Dalinar is contemplating, even without Adolin knowing it, he's watching Adolin, and Adolin is growing in his position, in his authority, and his competence. And Dalinar is proud of him, very much so. But there is something that is unique about Dalinar. We don't know what. We're essentially introduced to it here in this chapter, is that Dalinar cannot remember his wife. Something has happened that has taken his memory of his wife, the boy's mother. And so when he looks at Adolin, Adolin has bright blonde hair, and Dalinar does not. Dalinar has very, very dark hair, and he can see little traces of dark hair in Adolin, but he imagines that is from his mother. What happens when people talk about Dalinar's wife? She's dead. She has died. Actually, Dalinar's hearing sort of goes out. The word of her name is fuzzed. It's as if it's a sizzling noise it hears in his brain. And that's all we know. So that is an interesting little revelation that we're made aware of. But he's proud of Adolin, and he hopes that he will continue to grow, and he hopes that he can unite them. Just like that voice that he's heard, the visions that come during the high storm. He hopes that Adolin is going to help him unite the Alethi people. Well, conquest for the gem hearts, like we just experienced, this really is paying for the Vengeance Pact that the Alethi have sworn in honor of the slain Gavilar. Dalinar, 6 years ago, when they initiated this war, they essentially tracked the Parshendi to the Shattered Plains. And the Shattered Plains, obviously, they're vast land with massive chasms all the way through it. And the Parshendi have somehow escaped towards the center of the plains. The Alethi, for all that they know, have pretty much completely surrounded, and they've engaged in siege warfare. And that was Dalinar's idea. However, this siege has gone on for nearly 6 years, and Dalinar is concerned that the Alethi have forgotten even really why they came out here. They know it intellectually, but when he looks around at the war camps, when he sees the Alethi soldiers and essentially given to drunkenness, given to idleness, given to weakness, he is less and less convinced that this is a good thing. Of course, he's brought that up to Adolin in previous chapters, and Adolin was very distraught about it. But his thinkings bring him back essentially into the reality of where they're at. In the most recent chasm fiend hunt, it's actually something that is pretty much become the most common experience while on the Shattered Plains, which are what they call these chasm runs. And whenever scouts send word back to the war camps that a chasm fiend has been spotted, not only do the Alethi try to race as fast as they can to where this chasm fiend is at, whichever chasm it's in, and they actually have an ongoing competition that the camp of the High Prince, the army that gets there first, wins the competition, and they get the opportunity to try to fight and kill the chasm fiend and receive the gem heart for the High Prince. And Sadaes is very successful in this, and he's successful because of the bridge crews that he uses. Now we know that Kholin is in one of Sadaes's bridge crews, Bridge 4. And so using men to bring these bridges across the Shattered Plains, that is his approach. And for him, the loss of life is absolutely worth it. Actually, Sadaes is going to be chiding Dalinar. Once Dalinar wanders back into the tent where the king's at and others, Sadaes begins essentially making fun of him, bragging to the king about how many gem hearts Sadaes has received and earned recently, and how few it's and how long it's been since Dalinar has won a gem heart. And Dalinar begins to push him. And the Alethi war codes are something that Gavilar followed, something that Dalinar follows. And really, Dalinar and Adolin alone now are really the only soldiers that follow these Alethi war codes. And one of the codes states that a commander should do nothing that he himself isn't willing to do. He shouldn't force his soldiers to do it, or his people. And Dalinar views this bridge run with these bridge crews as exact opposite. And he actually calls Sadaes out and says, there's no way that you would ever run unguarded, unprotected, without shard plate or shield or sword into the oncoming fire of the Parshendi. And Sadaes is going to say, well, it works, so it's worth it. And what is the big point of fighting these chasm fiends? Well, it's the gem hearts that they get to cut out of the chest of these massive creatures. It's expensive to have an army, and it's expensive to engage in siege warfare. And each high prince is responsible to pay for his own war camp. And one of these gem hearts can pay for an entire war camp, all the expenses for months. And so it is a huge competition in order to get these and to be able to continue to pay for the costs. Well, the jabs and the jibes between Sadaes and Dalinar grow and grow more and more harsh. And Adolin is there, and Adolin is definitely a hothead at this point, wanting to defend his father's honor. And he jumps into the conversation, and he calls out Sadaes, and essentially he calls him out for being a coward in the last chasm fight. His father and he were down there with swords facing down this beast while Sadaes was hiding from behind the rocks, shooting a bow and arrow from a distance. Dalinar steps in and says, son, I will take care of this. And they keep bickering back and forth. In fact, this entire conversation, it brings Dalinar back to something that he was meditating on. It's something that Gavilar told him over 6 years ago at this point. And he told him it was a quote from a very famous book for the Alethi. It's a book called The Way of Kings. Well, it's interesting that our book is entitled The Way of Kings, but this book, The Way of Kings, it is essentially a biography of an old Alethi king, King Noadon. And he's going to write this book, and in it are going to be principles for a good king, a true king. And Gavilar quotes part of it to Dalinar, and he applies it to him. He actually tells Dalinar, brother, you must find the most important words a man can say. Again, that's a quote from the ancient text, The Way of Kings. And Dalinar, in this moment, considers how Sadaes is just spouting off nonsense. He's bragging about essentially the death toll that he's racking up in order to get these gem hearts, and sort of brings him back to this. And Sadaes, again, though, takes it too far. Listen to what he says to Dalinar. He says, Dalinar, I can't believe that this is your progeny, right? These are your sons. He says, one son can barely control himself, and the other is incompetent. This is your legacy, old friend? And Dalinar, showing restraint, says, I'm proud of both of them, Sadaes. Whatever you think. Now, if it had ended there, they probably would have been able to walk away. But Sadaes continues, the firebrand, referring to Adolin, the firebrand, I can understand. You were once impetuous just like him. But the other one, this is referring to Renarin, says, but the other one, you saw how he ran out onto the field today. He even forgot to draw his sword or bow. He is useless. And that little insult took it too far. Adolin pushed his hands out to the side like he's going to summon his shard blade, and essentially challenge Sadaes to a duel. Dalinar steps in, and I wanted to read what Dalinar says here. And this is such a good example of quiet strength, right? Dalinar turned his attention to Sadaes, speaking very softly, but poignantly. Sadaes, surely I did not just hear you openly, before the king, call my son useless. Surely you would not say that, as such an insult would demand that I summon my blade and seek your blood, shatter the vengeance pack, cause the king's two great allies to kill one another. Surely you would not have been that foolish. Surely I misunderstood. And the whole room goes silent. And Sadaes says, perhaps you did hear me wrong. I would not insult your son. That would have been not wise of me. Things sort of dissipate for a moment. Sort of chatter continues on, when one voice pipes in, and is the voice of Wit. Now, you remember Wit here? He is the king's wit, and it is his job to essentially insult everybody in honor of the king, because the king can't do it himself. And not that he's incapable, but that would be beneath him. Well, Wit strolls in, perfect timing here to break the ice, and for about 3 straight pages, he rips Sadaes a new one, right? He insults him left and right. He calls him every name under the sun. He insults his character, his intellect, his courage. And Sadaes, in frustration, the more and more Wit's insulting him, his hand drifts down to his sword. And of course, we find that it is legal to kill the king's wit. However, if you're going to do it, you forfeit all of your lands and your title, which most would consider not worth it, obviously. And so Wit actually calls him on it, right? He says, are you going to finally do it? Are you going to man up and take me out on behalf of the entire kingdom? Of course, Sadaes will not. He slowly removes his hand from the hilt of the sword, nods to the king, and strides away in anger and frustration. Elhokar chides Wit a little bit. He says, Wit, Sadaes has my favor. There's no need to torment him so. Wit's going to say, I disagree. The king's favor may be torment enough for most men, but not him. So even there, he can chide the king and get away with it. Well, Wit sort of wanders off. Adolin looks to his father and it just essentially says, I like him, right? He likes that man. And Dalinar sends his sons away, go and report back to the king the final death toll. Adolin, we need to go look into something for the king that they're going to get back to in the second half of the chapter. But here we get even more of the dynamic between Sadaes and Dalinar. They're allies, but they're not friends. Adolin, who is a hothead, wants to defend his father, wants to really show the kingdom that his father is the hero that he has always heard about. He catches glimpses, most recently, when he catches the actual claws of the chasm fiend. But Dalinar, it has a different motivation now. Unite them. That keeps coming up again and again. The visions that he has during the high storm. So where are these things going to go? How are these things going to come together? It seems like everyone has their own motivation. And which motivation ultimately is going to prevail? Is it going to be competition? Are they going to essentially divide themselves up with greed and selfishness? Or are they going to unite as Dalinar desperately wants them to do? That's where the first half of chapter 15 ends. Second half, we're going to see a conversation where Dalinar is trying to begin uniting the High Princes. And there's one that he wants to really begin to befriend. So we'll get to that next the next video, second half of the chapter. Thanks so much for watching. If you watched this far, I really thank you. Would you consider subscribing? That would be such a help to continue to grow the channel. It's so fun to read these stories, to imagine, to unlock even that creativity within each of us. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know below what you think Dalinar is doing, right? That uniting aspect. Is it worth it, or should they give in to that Alethi competition that all of the other High Princes seem to be perfectly fine with? What makes Dalinar different? Look forward to having that conversation, and we will catch you on the next video. Thank you all so much.